But there's absolutely nothing about any sort of social interaction. So if he's someone who needs to be prompted to brush his teeth, let's say that's sort of example, then is he going to be the person who can go out and access his community, or is he going to be the sort of person who needs help to find out what's...
That's true.
But it's also who's this being shared with this support plan? It might be relevant that the GP is on that.
Okay.
We talked about important to me and for me about rewording. It was mostly rewording all the things as well, and then just on the important to me for me, actually get an attachment there and having that personalised profile of the pictures, the hearts and stuff like that, and actually attaching it so if someone sees a support plan, they can see their own work and it's their own plan. So we thought that'd be like a really good way of putting it. Actually, I'm not saying what's important to them for them, they've actually done it themselves and we just attach it.
In that this isn't all about the money, is it? This could be a support plan about how somebody gets involved in a local group within their local community at the end of their road or something like that costs nothing.
Yeah.
So yes, I understand that there is a money side of things, but it's getting that balance at the moment. I think the money side of things drives things rather than what the individual might benefit from in some way.
Yeah.
So that
Don't often think about what support someone might need to manage a direct payment.
Yeah.
So that's not included in the support plan.
Yes.
How are we going to support someone to use a direct payment?
What is the social worker's role? What are they, in that support plan, what are they having to write and do? The second one is, what is the social worker needing and what information does she have to provide to the direct payment carer? And then the third one is, what is the direct payment carer? What's their responsibility for themselves and how they manage their direct payments? And I think once that is all in place, there'll be less, there'll be less confusion, and I'll know what my responsibility is as a professional, but the direct payment carer will know their direct payment responsibility, because at the moment it is all over the place. And I think if you have a specific direct payment plan, that can be at the very start, and then on the second page is what's important for the direct payment carer and what's for them, and then underneath what's important for the individual themselves, so they have that personalised plan.
Yeah. Funded support that is really needed for that people who really have to go into a residential home or nursing home or need complex support at home, that we're maintaining enough funds to meet those needs. And there is there's a phrase in the Care Act which is around the local authority. It's a catch-all phrase about being reasonableness in terms of our financial resources, so that we have the responsibility to think about that public accountability, about how we use money. And this is the sticky bit, isn't it? This is the bit that we're talking about in terms of knowing the gap, really, which is the reality. And it's about we started off talking about trust and honesty, didn't we? But actually maybe we need to be a bit more honest about this, which is that we can't pay for everything.
Yeah.
It's why we have an assessment, because we do have to judge, we have to make our professional judgment as to whether someone is eligible against those eligibility criteria, and then decide in terms of those needs that someone has, what needs to be funded, and what can be met elsewhere or is already being met. So you have to be eligible at those 3 stages. So we've just run through those. So their needs are caused by physical or mental impairment or illness. So that's the very first stage. There has to be some physical or mental impairment or illness that qualifies you for care and support from your local authority. Managing and maintaining nutrition, maintaining personal hygiene, managing toilet needs, being appropriately clothed, being able to make use of the home safely, maintaining a habitable home environment, developing and maintaining family or other personal relationships, and this is where the accessing the community comes, accessing and engaging in work, training, education or volunteering. Oh, sorry, that's in this. Yeah, this is the next one. Making use of necessary facilities or services in the local community, including public transport and recreational facilities or services, and carrying out any caring responsibilities the adult has for a child. So those are the specified outcomes.
It's like if you get 2 of them, you win a prize that you don't really want to win anyway. You know, you're in the club if you've got 2 of them. But it's really odd that out in the normal world, when you need support from social services, you haven't got that list in your head.
No.
But they have got that list in their head. And they've got to find 2 of those, yay, bingo! You know, it's that sort of strange world. So that's what we're here to look at,
And I
really.
think there's a lack of understanding between the two parties, which is where a brick wall starts to be built.
And I know that, you know, maybe for social workers, for the social work team, that stuff has to be documented, but somehow we need to start right from the beginning on a level playing field by knowing something that we can relate to, which would then probably help me relate to that later.
Absolutely.
You know, in a way that I could that I could really see and understand.
Yeah.
But right from the beginning, I'd be on a more level playing field where I'd understand what you were asking me, rather than getting confused and not giving you maybe the right response.
What I want to challenge social workers to think about is, if you were saying this to your friend, or the person on the bus, or talking about yourself, how would you say it? If you write it in a support plan, why do you say it differently? So I'd say, I walk about. Just been for a walk, I'm walking up the street, I'm walking around my house, I walk about. My house. Went a bit older then. But if we write it in a support plan, they would write, she mobilises safely.
Oh.
Why? Why do we mobilise? I'd say, I'm going for a wash, I'm getting washed and dressed. If we write it in a support plan, we might say, she's carrying out a personal care regime. Why? I might say, I fell over yesterday. If the social worker writes about it, it becomes an event. The social worker will say she had a fall.
Yeah.
It's like having a birthday, having a party, you have a fall. It becomes an event. We've had great food to eat and drink today. In the support plan, it will say she needs to maintain adequate nutrition and hydration. I don't really want to talk to you. I'll say, I don't want to talk right now, or I can't talk right now, or I'm just not in the mood to talk right now. In the support plan, it will say you refuse to engage. The word regime or programme, or we like those things, I don't know why. So this case, which is what? It's short and simple. Because it works for you, it works for everyone. And ask of the social worker, is that what you'd say to your friend? Is that how you describe it? The language you're using about yourself is the same language you need to use about somebody else. We don't need to dress it up and turn it into a whole fancy thing because we're writing it.
People feeling criminalised through experience that you've got to be checked upon that you're using them correctly, when the majority of us will be put in a position where we're well, I don't know how much trust there is, but it's the word that arose when you were talking, that actually we need to develop trust from every side. Obviously you receive a care plan, or whatever you want the phrase, but maybe there's a way that can meet everybody, so we all understand right from early on what our obligations are to it and what we need to provide. But quite often, in terms of, there are some very difficult experiences where, for example, a big chunk of money is taken back, and it's just taken, if you have a Just Credit Union account, the authority can just take that, which has happened to me. And it wasn't that I wasn't using it, it was that Just Credit Union weren't allowing me to use it. Because they didn't understand what my support plan was and what that meant. And it actually put me in a position of looking like I wasn't using it correctly. So I wasn't trusted, I was criminalised. And I just think we've got to find something where we all understand each other.
What we do is not audit the social work side of it. We get involved once the care plan's been agreed and everything's signed off and the money's been put in place. We come in and then look at the side that Carolyn's team deal with. So how are we making sure that that money is being used in the best way, that everything's been equitable so that there's no discrepancies depending on where you live in the county or what social workers assessed you, that there's a system that generates a fair and equitable funding. When you've got that funding, there are some identified, I don't know how the best language to use, but needs, outcomes to be met, and that's the difficulty in how do you assess how that funding has been used best, and has it gone to be used in the best way, I suppose. So if the care plan isn't clear for us, or there aren't what we'd call SMART, I would say specific, measurable, achievable, realistic or time-bound, how do we give assurance that the council's money has been used in the best way?
What's his name?
Bill. So how many hours would you get? I mean, my mind just can't think in hours. I just can't go, 3 hours.
Social workers, if you've got
the
50.
standard thing in that she needs definitely at the moment,
Yeah.
and then you've got a temporary sort of skills building, review it on a 3 monthly ish.
But should we start with what the needs are and some of the kind of ideas?
Can I ask a question about that? Because that very question about the hours we fall straight back into that task and time approach, don't we? Straight away we're saying hours. Do we not need to work out what would benefit her well-being?
Talking about changing indirect payments is not being done to or done for. It's about doing with.
Yeah. And so we started to try and identify the key points that were necessary for this individual's well-being. And they were around eating appropriately and eating well so they could look after their health. So we spent a lot of time trying to redress that idea of needs back to what's going to be really important for the individual's well-being.
4 calls a day, don't it? Go on, surprise me.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 calls.
Yeah.
So we worked out that individual could get, over the week, about 14 hours across the week. Roughly worked
We
out.
added 2 hours for social.
Did we? Oh, sorry, then we added 2 hours. Yeah, because we realised that it was 2 hours in the week or something like that.
To get a bit of fresh air.
Yeah. And we also felt that would lead to worsening of conditions, and so actually the costs of all this would increase as the individual got worse and so forth. So it's just going to go on and on. So then we thought, well, okay, how can we translate that into well-being hours? And we did some strange calculation where we looked at what would it cost for a PA. Well, a PA is roughly $10.98 per hour, and so we worked out that we could get about 28 hours worth of PA time out of this.
I need big chunks of hours in order that I can get out and do anything, or whether that's shopping and food preparation. or like coming here today, and that will have an impact. But I need to be able, and everyone needs to be able to see is what is appropriate for the person. So rather than 4 calls a day, why can that not be, it should be used in the way that person wants to, as rather than 4 calls or 4 half hours to, a chunk of 2 hours. But unless we put out that's what people need, 2 PAs, we're never going to get it. So it's actually takes some responsibility from all of us, doesn't it, to actually say that's what we need.
We got this session today because obviously we missed our final celebration event with Mend the Gap, and it's an opportunity for us all to get back together and a chance to sort of feedback about Mend the Gap, kind of what's happened since, and and just as important is your feedback to being part of Mend the Gap, and what has Mend the Gap meant to you. And the second one is, why did you want to take part when you heard about it? And the third one is, there anything that you do differently as a result of being part of the project?
What it did is just put me in direct contact with lots of people, huge scope of different professionals, individuals, students within the service. So they were actually face to face and talking, which doesn't happen often. And it was those contacts and those communications that I think I really valued. And even though there were at times things were really difficult, so, I just really got much more of a sense of understanding that there are a lot of passionate people really trying to work towards the right thing. Sorry, wrong word, right. Because unless other people know what that is and what you're living with, what you're trying to work with, we can't really do anything about it, can we? And I know that I learned some really, really valuable things by the connections and the sharing.
We were taught about direct payments, and as always is the case, theory and practical is totally different thing. So that's why I got involved. I wanted to learn more. As a student, every learning opportunity, is very important. So I took this to say, I want to be part of this learning opportunity and hear what is it that people are talking about, because it was just something I'd learned maybe at university for about 30 minutes. And so I thought, let me go and listen to actually the people who are in receipt of this direct payment and their views about direct payment, and how is it that is working for them, and what professionals can do to support other people who are expecting to have direct payment. So that's why I got involved in this. And having said that, when I was at Ptarmigan at the time, we were told about, you need to write a support plan that's person-centered. And then we went to Mend the Gap and we said, okay, what is person-centered? And then that's when we learned that from people who are actually in receipt of direct payment, say, this is what we want. Remember when we put on the walls pictures and things like what somebody would want from their support planning, that helped me. And up till now, I'm with a mental health team, but I'm still using that. To say, this is what people want. We have to be creative in making a support plan for people. Creative in the way that it's got to be linked to them. It's not what we read on the system to say, can you do this, can you do that? It's what people want. So that actually helped me.
When obviously I started Mend the Gap, I was halfway through my first year of employment as a social worker, and I felt that obviously Mend the Gap was actually my first chance to obviously speak to other individuals and really get to know obviously this specific service that's provided out to people, and it's gave me a more in-depth understanding as well of setting up a direct payment and actually what individuals want to get out of having a direct payment as well. And it was just nice listening to how they felt about support plans that have been written obviously previously and how we can then move forward. And it really opened my eyes about actually how am I writing my support plans and assessments, and how we say that it obviously is person centered, but obviously then when we got the support plans out, that actually they needed to be more improved. And it was really good insight really for me, for my learning from my first year, so it really did help with that.
For me, it was a great opportunity. I was feeling quite old and tired and worn, so it was really refreshing. It has been like a breath of fresh air actually, to be able to mix and talk and bond with so many people coming at it from so many different angles, particularly Mary and Beth, that it was invaluable to me to hear everything that they had to say, and I think I'd found that I'd become quite expert at writing support plans to get through funding panel, so it became almost as like a churning out, just maybe a slight rewording, but all my support plans were starting to sound like the same because of pressures from the staffing constraints and all of that goes on that we know about. It was just amazing. It's just been absolutely great. I think it's typical that there was then this long period with COVID, which we're still in, I suppose. Whereas I was determined to change my practice by getting back to how I used to be a few years ago.
I was doing my degree, the end of my social work degree. And really, the session that they sort of delivered on direct payments was a maximum of sort of half an hour long, and I didn't really understand what they were and how they'd work. And then on top of that, I was actually trying to support someone set up a direct payment as a way for them to sort of get some support, and I still didn't really have a clue what it was or how it would help him any more than a care package would support him. So so I guess that's really the biggest reason I took part, is because I wanted to understand, not just for him but for everyone that I came across, on how I would support them with direct payments, and if and why they were better than sort of packages of care, and the ins and outs of it really. So it was really, really helpful. I did end up helping that particular gentleman set up his direct payments in a really creative way that got him doing all the things that he wanted to be able to do. And I work in the mental health team now, and I'm sort of putting the more creative aspects into all the support plans. Like Anne said, it's really easy to know how to get care packages through the system, just to get them sort of processed and the funding approved. And but I am trying to use a lot of the Mend the Gap skills into creating more unique and creative support plans that really fit the person more than it does the process that we've sort of have to put them through.
So we just wanted to speak to you, Grace, from your point of view. What has Mend the Gap meant to you?
It's meant loads, mate. It's given me some I can't remember, can't think of the word.
Some opportunities.
Some opportunities to get my voice heard.
I was going to talk about the tile, Grace. Do you remember we made the tiles? And me, Grace, and Susie actually did ours together, and that was quite nice. We socially distanced in Grace's studio. But you got a chance, Grace, to tell people that you just live your life, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you ever think about having a support plan?
Not really.
Do you know what a support plan is?
No, I don't.
No. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
And
But you do have a planner and things like that, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Say what you do and what kind of things your PAs help you with.
Yeah, driving mostly.
Yeah, driving.
And getting around.
Yeah. That was Gracie's one. That was lovely. Mine doesn't need looking at, but together, brilliant. Thanks, Grace.
Actually, I do think hearing that point of view from the people that actually we're supposed to be working for, I definitely think that's beneficial. I like Lorraine was saying about softening the language even, you know, while training to be a social worker, you kind of talk to, you know, you're supposed to be talking to the people you're working with, but actually the language we use just isn't appropriate for some cases. You're not really taught that in uni, so definitely I think working with you has definitely given me an insight into that, definitely.
And I think it's helped me to support social workers and social care practitioners to encourage them to let go of thinking about a support plan document and more thinking about how to have conversations about people's lives, what they want to achieve, what their outcomes are, and that be more about that's the support planning bit, and then the document sort of supports that, or should do. And it's not necessarily just about direct payments, that's about good support planning, and direct payments is one way of doing that. The thing that I noticed for everyone is that it was a real confidence builder. And I think the reason a lot of practitioners sort of don't promote direct payments is a fear of the setup and how complicated it can seem and how much pressure maybe we're putting on people to become an employer. And then secondly, a fear that things could go wrong and how badly they can go wrong. And I think having the conversations just was a bit of a reality check that those are the abnormalities. Those aren't that's the exception to the rule, not the rule itself, and that we need to be thinking about how to overcome those hurdles and how to promote it as safely as we can, without the fear of what might go wrong or how tricky it might be for us as practitioners.
I think the vision that has come from this Mend the Gap group, those words that kept being repeated, and the vision about clear and simple, open and honest, flexible and creative, that is actually forming the benchmark for everything that we're doing. The working on the policy is brilliant, because we keep going back to them and saying, but is that clear and simple? You've just written that sentence. Is it clear and simple? Is it open and honest? What do you mean? Just say what you mean. Why don't we say what we mean? We can tell people the truth. If it's this, it's this. If it's that, it's that. We don't have to dress it up or use different language. So the vision has been brilliant, and I hope we've got we're only about halfway through the policy, consequently, but I hope that we end up with something that is very different and that it's very Shropshire. You know, we don't have to do things how other people do them. Yes, somebody else might have written a great policy on direct payments, but is it what we want? Probably not. We need a Shropshire thing that fits with how we're doing stuff and that takes account of all of this learning. So that's kind of, I think, why I wanted to be part. Really, what I'm doing differently is everything. Every single thing that I write or do, every letter that we've looked at, believe me, we've looked at all the direct payment letters and we've gone from, why are we saying you are required to do this? Sounds like the Gestapo. Why are we saying it? Why don't we just say, we need you to send this in, or we'd like you to send this in? We've softened and we've taken the edge off everything that we're doing. And it's all really through the prism or the lens of what we did on Mend the Gap. Over and out.